The hospital room was quiet except for one sound, a baby's cry. But this cry would change everything. "Mrs. Chen," the doctor said slowly, his face pale as snow, "your baby is different." Maria Chen had been waiting 9 long months to hold her son. She had dreamed about his tiny fingers wrapping around Hayes. She had imagined teaching him to clap, to wave, to hold a spoon. But when the nurse finally brought the baby to her, wrapped tight in a blue blanket, Maria's heart stopped. Her son had no arms. Where his shoulders ended, there was nothing, just smooth skin and the curve of his small body. The baby looked up at her with the brightest eyes she had ever seen, and then he smiled. Even though he was only minutes old, he smiled. "I'm so sorry," the doctor whispered. "This is a rare condition. He will never be able to do the things other children do. He will need help his whole life. Some families choose." "Stop," Maria said, her voice shaking but strong. "Don't say another word." She pulled her baby close to her chest and felt his warm breath against her neck. He smelled like hope and heaven mixed together. In that moment, while everyone in the room looked at her with pity, Maria made a choice. She would not see tragedy. She would see purpose. "His name is Daniel," she said firmly, "and he is perfect." But not everyone agreed. When Maria's husband, Robert, came into the room, his face turned gray. He looked at Daniel once, then looked away quickly, as if seeing the baby hurt his eyes. How did this happen?" Robert asked, his voice breaking. "Sometimes these things just happen," the doctor explained. "It's nobody's fault." Robert sat down in the corner chair and put his head in his hands. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just sat there like a statue made of sadness. Maria's mother arrived next. She took one look at Daniel and started sobbing. "Oh, my poor daughter. Oh, that poor baby. What kind of life will he have?" "A beautiful life," Maria said, holding Daniel tighter. "You'll see." But her mother shook her head. "How will he eat? How will he play? How will he go to school? Maria, be realistic. This child will suffer." The words stung like 100 bees, but Maria refused to let them win. She looked down at Daniel, who had fallen asleep in her arms, his little chest rising and falling peacefully. He looked like any other baby, soft cheeks, tiny nose, perfect lips. The only difference was what he didn't have. That night, alone in her hospital bed with Daniel sleeping in a crib beside her, Maria cried. She cried for all the things people said he would never do. She cried because she was scared. She cried because loving him already hurt so much. But then Daniel made a small sound in his sleep, a happy sound, like a tiny laugh. And Maria stopped crying. "I don't know how," she whispered to him, "but I will show you how to live. I promise." The next morning, a group of doctors came to talk to Maria. They brought charts and papers and serious faces. "Mrs. Chen, we need to discuss Daniel's future," the head doctor said. "There are special homes for children with severe disabilities, places where trained professionals can—" "No," Maria interrupted. "His coming home with me." "But Mrs. Chen, caring for a child without arms is extremely difficult. Feeding alone will be a challenge. And as he grows, he'll need constant supervision. He'll never be independent." Maria stood up from her bed, even though her body still ached from giving birth. She walked to Daniel's crib and picked him up with gentle hands. "You're wrong," she said, looking each doctor in the eye. "My son will do amazing things. I don't know how yet, but he will, and I will be there to help him every single day." The doctors left, shaking their heads. They thought Maria was in denial. They thought she didn't understand how hard life would be. But Maria understood something they didn't. She understood that love could build bridges where there were no roads. The first week at home was the hardest week of Maria's life. Daniel couldn't drink from a normal bottle. Maria had to hold him in a special way, supporting his whole body while carefully positioning the bottle in his mouth. It took 4 to 5 minutes to feed him, and he needed to eat every 3 hours. Maria barely slept. Robert tried to help, but he couldn't look at Daniel without tears filling his eyes. "I wanted to teach him to throw a ball," Robert said one night. "I wanted to teach him to ride a bike. What kind of father am I now?" "You're the father of a miracle," Maria said. "You just don't see it yet." But Robert wasn't ready to see. A few weeks later, he left. He said he needed time to think. That time turned into months, and then he stopped calling altogether. Maria was alone with Daniel, but she refused to give up. When Maria took Daniel outside for the first time, neighbors stared. Old Mrs. Wilson from next door gasped and covered her mouth. Mr. Lee from across the street looked away quickly. Children pointed and asked their parents loud questions. Why doesn't that baby have arms? Is he broken? Each stare felt like a knife, but Maria held her head high. She dressed Daniel in the cutest outfit she could find. She sang to him while they walked. She showed the world that her son was loved. At night, when Daniel was sleeping, Maria would research everything she could find about people without arms. She read about a man who painted with his feet. She read about a woman who became a pilot. She read about children who learned to write, to swim, to dance. If they could do it, Daniel could too. On Daniel's first birthday, he did something that made Maria cry happy tears. He was sitting on the floor when his favorite toy rolled away. Maria was about to get it for him, but she stopped herself. "You can do it, Daniel," she whispered. Daniel looked at the toy. He looked at his mother. Then he leaned forward and used his shoulder to nudge himself across the floor. Inch by inch, he moved. His little legs kicked and pushed. His body twisted and turned. It took 5 whole minutes, but he reached that toy. When he got there, he grabbed it with his toes and brought it to his mouth, laughing with pure joy. Maria fell to her knees beside him. "You did it. You moved all by yourself." That night, she wrote in her journal, "Today, Daniel showed me that impossible is just a word. He will do great things. I know it in my heart. The world told me he would suffer, but they were wrong. He will soar." And she was right. By the time Daniel turned 3, he could do things that made doctors shake their heads in amazement. He could pick up a spoon with his toes and feed himself. He could turn on the television with his foot. He could even open doors by using his shoulder and his leg together. Every day, he learned something new. But the most amazing thing wasn't what Daniel could do. It was how happy he was while doing it. "Mama, watch this," he would shout, then use his toes to stack blocks higher and higher. When the tower fell, he would laugh and start again. Maria had turned their home into a training ground. She put everything at Daniel's level: toys, books, snacks. She taught him that his feet were just as good as hands, maybe even better. "Your feet are special, Daniel," she told him every morning. "God gave you the strongest, smartest feet in the whole world." Daniel believed her. He practiced every single day. While other 3-year-olds were learning to color with crayons in their hands, Daniel was learning to hold a crayon between his toes. His first drawing was a wobbly circle, but to Maria, it looked like the sun. "It's beautiful," she cried, taping it to the refrigerator. "You're an artist." Daniel beamed with pride. "I'm going to draw 100 pictures, Mama. 1,000 pictures." And he did. By the time he was 4, the walls of their small apartment were covered with Daniel's artwork. Flowers drawn with toes, houses sketched with careful concentration, and always, always, pictures of his mother, stick figures with big smiles and hearts all around them. But then came the day Maria had been dreading, the day Daniel started school. The principal, Mrs. Harper, had called Maria 3 times before Daniel's first day. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Chen? We have special schools for children with Daniel's condition, schools with trained staff and special equipment." "Daniel doesn't need a special school," Maria said firmly. "He needs friends. He needs to learn like every other child." Mrs. Harper sighed. "I hope you're right." Daniel was so excited on his first day that he woke up before sunrise. "Is it time for school yet, Mama? Is it time?" Maria dressed him in his favorite blue shirt and helped him put on his shoes. Then she knelt down and looked into his bright eyes. "Daniel, some children might say mean things today. Some might stay. But I need you to remember something very important." She touched his chest, right over his heart. "You are brave. You are strong. And you are just as good as anyone else. Do you believe that?" "I believe it, Mama," Daniel said, smiling. But believing it and living it were 2 different things. When Maria walked Daniel into the classroom, every single child stopped and stared. The room went silent. Then a boy with red hair pointed and shouted, "Look, that kid doesn't have arms." A girl with pigtails gasped. "How does he eat? How does he play?" Another boy laughed. "He looks funny." Daniel's smile disappeared. He moved closer to his mother's leg. The teacher, Miss Rodriguez, clapped her hand quickly. "Children, that is not how we treat new friends. This is Daniel, and is going to be in our class. Everyone say hello to Daniel." A few children mumbled hello, but most just kept staring. Maria kissed the top of Daniel's head. "You can do this," she whispered. Then she left, even though leaving felt like tearing her own heart in half. The first week of school was terrible. At lunch, Daniel tried to eat with his feet like he did at home, but the other children laughed. "That's gross," they said. "You're eating with your feet. That's where you walk." At recess, no one would play with him. When Daniel tried to join a game of tag, a boy named Marcus said, "You can't play. You can't tag anybody. You don't have hands." Daniel sat alone on a bench, watching the other children run and play. When Maria picked him up that day, she found him crying in the classroom. "I want to go home," Daniel sobbed. "Nobody likes me. They say I'm weird." Maria's heart broke into a million pieces, but she couldn't let Daniel see her cry. "Do you know what weird means, Daniel? It means special. It means different. And different is the best thing you can be." "But I want to be normal," Daniel said quietly. "Normal is boring," Maria said, wiping his tears with her thumb. "You, my son, are extraordinary." That night, Maria made a decision. She would teach Daniel not just to survive, but to shine. She bought special art supplies, thick crayons, big paintbrushes, colored pencils. Every afternoon after school, she worked with Daniel for hours. She taught him to hold things tighter with his toes. She showed him how to press harder, color smoother, draw clearer. "Your feet can do anything hands can do," she said. "You just have to practice." Daniel practiced until his toes hurt. He practiced until he got better. Then he practiced more. 3 months later, Miss Rodriguez announced an art contest. "Children, you're going to draw a picture of your family. The best picture will be displayed in the school office for the whole year." The children grabbed their crayons and got to work, but they drew with their hands, quickly and messily. Daniel did something different. He took off his shoe and sock. He picked up a crayon with his toes, and he began to draw. Slowly, carefully, each line perfect. The children nearby stopped drawing and watched him. "Wow!" A girl named Sophie whispered. "Look how good that is." Daniel drew his mother standing in front of their house. He drew flowers in the yard and bird in the sky. He drew the sun shining down on everything. And in the corner, he drew himself, small but smiling, standing beside his mother. When Miss Rodriguez came to collect the drawings, she stopped at Daniel's desk. She picked up his picture with both hands and stared at it for a long time. "Daniel," she finally said, her voice shaky, This is the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen." The whole class gathered around to look. Even Marcus, the boy who had been meanest to Daniel, stood there with his mouth open. "How did you do that with your feet?" Marcus asked. Daniel looked up and smiled. "My mama says my feet are special. She says they can do anything." Miss Rodriguez hung Daniel's picture in the school office that very afternoon. But she didn't just hang it. She put a sign underneath it that said, "Drawn by Daniel Chen using his amazing feet." The next day, everything changed. Children who had ignored Daniel now wanted to sit with him at lunch. "Can you teach me to draw with my feet?" Sophie asked. "Can you show me how you do it?" Another boy said. By the end of the week, Daniel had started something new, a drawing club. Every day after school, 5 or 6 children would take off their shoes and try to draw with their toes. They were terrible at first, and they laughed at their wobbly lines and silly shapes. But Daniel was patient. "It takes practice," he told them. "I practiced every single day." Marcus came to the club too. He sat down next to Daniel and said quietly, "I'm sorry I was mean to you. I didn't understand." "It's okay," Daniel said, smiling. "Do you want to try drawing a dinosaur? Dinosaurs are fun." Marcus nodded, and for the first time, he and Daniel became friends. One day, when Daniel was 5 years old, something amazing happened at school. something that made everyone stop and stare all over again. It was morning, and the children were getting ready for class. Daniel was sitting on the floor, and his shoe had come untied. Usually, Miss Rodriguez or Maria would tie it for him. But that day, Daniel looked at his shoe and decided to try something new. He bent down low. He picked up one shoelace with his left toes and the other with his right toes. Then, slowly and carefully, he began to tie them together. The classroom went quiet. Every child watched. Daniel's face was serious, focused. His toes moved like tiny fingers, looping and pulling, crossing and tightening. It took him 3 whole minutes, but finally he pulled the bow tight. "I did it," he shouted, jumping to his feet. "I tied my shoe." The classroom exploded with cheers. Children clapped and whistled. Miss Rodriguez had tears running down her face. "Daniel Chen," she said, her voice full of pride, "you are absolutely incredible." That afternoon, when Maria came to pick Daniel up, Miss Rodriguez pulled her aside. "Mrs. Chen, I need to tell you something. When Daniel first came to this school, I wasn't sure he would fit in. I wasn't sure he could keep up with the other children." She paused, wiping her eyes. "I was wrong. Daniel isn't just keeping up. He's leading the way. He's teaching these children about courage, about persistence, about not giving up. He's changing this whole school." Maria hugged Miss Rodriguez tight. "Thank you for believing in him." That night, Daniel couldn't stop talking about his day. "Mama, everyone thinks I'm cool now. They don't think I'm weird anymore. They think I'm special." "You've always been special, my love," Maria said, kissing his forehead. The world just needed time to see it. By the time Daniel turned 6, he was famous in his school. Teachers would bring other classes to watch him draw. The principal asked him to speak at school assemblies. Children who felt sad or scared would come talk to Daniel, and he would tell them, "If I can tie my shoes with my feet, you can do anything." One day, a little girl with a leg brace came up to Daniel during recess. She was crying because some older kids had made fun of how she walked. Daniel sat down beside her. "You know what?" he said gently. "Being different is a superpower. It just takes time to learn how to use it." The little girl looked at him with wide eyes. "Really?" "Really," Daniel said. "Look at me. I don't have arms, but I can draw better than anyone in this school. You know why? Because I practiced. Because I didn't give up. And because my mama taught me that I'm not what I don't have. I'm what I choose to become." The little girl stopped crying. She smiled a tiny smile. "Thank you, Daniel." That night, the little girl's mother called Maria. "I don't know what Daniel said to my daughter today, but she came home different. Happier. Stronger. Your son is a gift to this world." Maria hung up the phone and looked at Daniel, who was on the floor drawing with his toes as always. Her heart swelled with so much love she thought it might boast. "Daniel," she said softly, "I think you're ready." "Ready for what, Mama?" "Ready to show the whole world what miracles look like." The letter came on a Tuesday morning in a bright yellow envelope. Maria opened it carefully while Daniel ate his breakfast with his toes, as graceful now as any child with hands. The letter was from a television show called Miracles Among Us, a show that shared stories of extraordinary people doing impossible things. "Dear Daniel," Maria read aloud, her hands shaking. "We have heard about your amazing story from your school principal. We would be honored if you would appear on our show to inspire millions of people around the world." Daniel's eyes went wide. "Millions of people, Mama? That's a lot." "It is a lot," Maria said, kneeling beside him. "Are you scared?" Daniel thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No, Mama. You taught me that my story can help people. If I can help even one person feel brave, then I should do it." Maria hugged him tight. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best teacher in the world," Daniel said, grinning. "You." 3 weeks later, Daniel and Maria walked into the biggest television studio they had ever seen. Lights hung from the ceiling like giant stars. Cameras pointed in every direction. And in the center of it all was a stage with 2 red chairs. A kind woman with a microphone greeted them. Her name was Sarah Chen, no relation to Daniel, but she said it felt like fate. "Daniel, we are so excited to meet you. Are you ready to share your story? Daniel nodded, but Maria saw his hands, well, his feet, trembling slightly. She bent down and whispered, "Remember, you're not doing this for fame. You're doing this for every child who feels different, every mother who feels scared, every person who thinks they can't. Show them they can." "I will, Mama," Daniel promised. The studio lights dimmed. The audience grew quiet. A voice announced, "Please welcome to the stage, Daniel Chen, the boy with golden feet." Daniel walked onto that stage barefoot, his head held high. The audience of 300 people stood up and clapped so loud it sounded like thunder. Some people were already crying, and Daniel hadn't even spoken yet. Sarah sat across from him, smiling warmly. "Daniel, thank you for being here. Can you tell everyone watching, and there are millions of people watching right now, can you tell them about the day you were born?" Daniel took a deep breath. His voice was small but clear. "The day I was born, the doctors told my mama I was broken. They said I would never be able to do things like other kids. They said she should put me in a special home and forget about me." The audience gasped. Someone in the back row sobbed. "But my mama didn't listen," Daniel continued, his voice growing stronger. "She took me home. She loved me, and she taught me the most important thing anyone has ever taught me." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "She taught me that I'm not what I don't have. I'm what I choose to become." The audience exploded with applause. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. "Daniel, I've seen videos of you drawing, writing, even tying your shoes, all with your feet. How did you learn to do these things?" "Practice," Daniel said simply. "And my mama, she never did things for me. She taught me to do them myself. When I was little and I wanted a toy, she didn't hand it to me. She put it on the floor and said, 'You can reach it.' When I wanted to draw, she didn't draw for me. She showed me how to hold a crayon with my toes. Every single day, she believed I could do more." Sarah turned to Maria, who was sitting in the front row. "Mrs. Chen, you're crying. What are you feeling right now?" Maria stood up, her whole body shaking with emotion. "I'm feeling proud. So proud. When Daniel was born, people told me his life would be full of suffering. But they were wrong. His life is full of joy, full of purpose, full of love. Yes, we've had hard days. Yes, I've cried many nights. But every single tear was worth it to see the man my son is becoming." The audience gave Maria a standing ovation. But then Sarah held up a hand. "Daniel, I have a surprise for you. We've been in contact with your school, and they sent us something special." A giant screen behind Daniel lit up. It showed a video of his entire school, all 300 students and 20 teachers, standing in the playground. They were holding a banner that said, "Daniel, you inspire us every day. You are our hero." Then, one by one, children began to speak into the camera. Sophie, the first girl who asked to join his drawing club. "Daniel taught me that being different is beautiful." Marcus, the boy who used to bully him. "Daniel taught me that sorry isn't just a word. It's a choice to be better." The little girl with the leg brace. "Daniel taught me that I'm not broken. I'm special." Miss Rodriguez, his teacher. "Daniel doesn't just belong in our school. He makes our school better." By the time the video ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the entire studio. Daniel was crying. Maria was crying. Even the camera operators were wiping their eyes. But Sarah wasn't finished. "Daniel, there's one more thing. You've spent 6 years learning to live without arms. You've done incredibly well. But what if you didn't have to anymore?" Daniel's heart started beating fast. "What do you mean?" 2 doctors in white coats walked onto the stage. One of them was carrying a large box. "Daniel," the first doctor said, kneeling beside him, "we've been working on something special. A new kind of prosthetic arm, mechanical arms that are controlled by signals from your shoulders and your brain. They're not perfect, but they're a start, and we'd like you to be the first child in the country to try them." Daniel looked at his mama. Maria was crying so hard she couldn't speak. She just nodded. The doctors carefully fitted the prosthetic arms onto Daniel's shoulders. They were silver and black, with fingers that could open and close. The doctors explained how they worked, how Daniel would need to practice, how it would take time to learn. But Daniel wasn't listening to the instructions. He was staring at these new arms that weren't really his, but could be. Try to lift your right arm, the doctor said gently. Daniel thought about it, concentrated hard, and slowly, the mechanical arm lifted up. The audience gasped. Now try to open your hand. The mechanical fingers spread apart. Daniel laughed, a sound of pure wonder. Can I? Daniel's voice broke. Can I hug my mama? Yes, the doctor said, smiling through tears. Yes, Daniel, you can hug your mama. Maria ran onto the stage. Daniel stood up, and for the first time in his entire life, he wrapped his arms, these new, mechanical, miraculous arms, around his mother. The hug lasted 30 seconds. But in those 30 seconds, the world stopped spinning. 3 million people watching on television cried. The studio audience sobbed openly. Cameras flashed as photographers captured the moment. When Daniel finally let go, he looked up at his mama and said, "Thank you for never giving up on me." Maria cupped his face in her hands. "Thank you for teaching me what miracles really look like." The show went viral immediately. Within hours, the video of Daniel's first hug had been viewed 20 million times. Within a week, 100 million. People from every country, speaking every language, shared the video with the same caption. "This is what love looks like." Messages poured in from around the world. A girl in Japan who was born deaf wrote, "Daniel showed me I can do anything." A boy in Brazil who lost his legs in an accident wrote, "I'm going to keep trying, just like Daniel." A mother in Egypt who had a child with disabilities wrote, "Thank you for showing me hope is real." But Daniel didn't let the fame change him. He still went to his same school. He still drew with his feet, even though he was learning to use his new arms. He still helped other children who felt different or scared. 6 months after the television appearance, Daniel did something even more amazing. He started a foundation called Golden Feet. It raised money to help other children with disabilities get prosthetics, wheelchairs, and therapy. Daniel visited hospitals every weekend, talking to sick children and drawing pictures for them. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do," he would say to each child. "I was born without arms, but I learned to draw, to write, to tie my shoes, and to hug. If I can do that, you can do anything you dream of." 1 year later, Daniel's foundation had helped 200 children. 5 years later, 2,000. The boy who was born without arms had given arms, real and mechanical, to countless others. On Daniel's 12th birthday, he painted something special. It was a portrait of his mother, sitting in that hospital room the day he was born, holding him for the first time. In the painting, light poured through the window behind her, making her glow like an angel. At the bottom of the painting, Daniel wrote these words with his own hand, his mechanical hand. "Miracles don't come from heaven. They come from mothers who refuse to stop believing." He gave the painting to Maria at his birthday party, in front of all his friends, his teachers, and news cameras that had come to cover the event. Maria looked at the painting and cried the way she had cried that first night in the hospital. But these were different tears. These were tears of joy. "You've given me everything, Mama," Daniel said, using both his mechanical arms and his feet to hug her, because he never forgot where his real strength came from. "No, my darling boy," Maria whispered. "You've given the world everything. You've shown us that love is stronger than fear, that hope is stronger than doubt, and that miracles grow from hearts that refuse to give up." The news cameras captured the moment. The reporters shared it with the world. And once again, millions of people cried, not because they felt sad, but because they felt hope. Because Daniel wasn't just a boy without arms who learned to hug. He was proof that limitations are just illusions, that love can reshape reality, and that the greatest miracles aren't the ones we receive. They are the ones we become. Years later, when people asked Daniel what the real miracle was, the prosthetic arms, the television fame, or the millions of lives he touched, he always gave the same answer. The real miracle was my mama. She looked at a baby without arms and saw unlimited possibility. She looked at what the world called tragedy and called it purpose. She didn't fix me because I was never broken. She just loved me until I was strong enough to love myself. And that love, that fierce, unbreakable, unconditional love, didn't just change one boy's life. It changed the world. Because in the end, the arms Daniel never had became a metaphor for boundless reach. The hands he couldn't hold became hands that held up thousands. And the boy who couldn't hug taught humanity itself how to embrace every impossible dream. The story ends where it began, with a mother's embrace and a world transformed by courage. Love built the miracle. The miracle rebuilt the world. And somewhere, in a small apartment covered with paintings drawn by both feet and mechanical fingers, a mother and son sit together, looking at that very first wobbly circle, the one that looked like the sun, and they remember that miracles aren't given. They are made, one brave choice at a time. Remember, love surpasses limitation. Courage multiplies when shared. True beauty lies in what we give, not what we lack. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Like and subscribe to hear more stories that prove miracles are real. Because somewhere in the world, another mother is holding a child the world calls broken, and she needs to know that love can build anything. The end, and the beginning of every miracle yet to come.